Sup Legends, and welcome back to another Unmatched First Impressions video where I give you my initial first thoughts on a new character coming to the game after only just a handful of plays. It's a fun little exercise where I try to predict how good the character will be, and oftentimes I am horribly wrong and have incredibly hot takes that age like a fine whole milk left out in the summer sun with a nice Mediterranean breeze blowing over it, slowly rippling away as it disintegrates into the foulness of the earth. Spider-Man! So this is Spider-Man from the new Unmatched Marvel Brains and Brawn set, which is available for order now on the Restoration Games website, which will be the top link in the description down below. They were kind enough as to send me a free preview copy of the game, so if you are interested in what you see here, definitely go check that out and order from them right now. Just open a new tab or something like that. So Spider-Man, personal anecdote time, because we'll make it all about me right now. Spider-Man was never like my favorite superhero, but like I grew up on the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man trilogy. I even enjoyed the third one, as cringy as the emo dance can be, but it wasn't until recent years, especially with the animated Into the Spider-Verse series, or I should just say Spider-Verse since the second one. The second one just came out last week. Like I saw it Across the Spider-Verse, and it really, watching that movie and watching the first movie, like really made me understand why people love this character, because he is like the average person dealing with a bunch of like normal person problems, like rent and family and girlfriends and things like that, and a job, and he could be anyone, and that like I didn't really like understand like that's why the character was so important to a lot of people until just now. And when I was rewatching Into the Spider-Verse, the first like 15 minutes of the film with Chris Pine's Spider-Man, where they do like the whole like here we go again, like here's the backstory, I was like, holy cow, I get it now. And obviously Across the Spider-Verse was just amazing, like even better than the first one, and I can't wait for Beyond. But anyways, this is Spider-Man. He's probably a lot of people's favorite superhero, probably Marvel character. When they announced that the 5th Marvel set was coming out, he was probably like a big draw for a lot of people, considering like he might be Marvel's like the Marvel superhero like that people think of. So anyways, that's just my understanding of this character. Leave a comment down below if I was completely wrong, or like what your thoughts on this character are, because that's my understanding of why people like Spider-Man and why he's so popular. So anyway, Mini. I like this Mini. I think they did something cool with it. You might disagree, but I just think he's like swinging in to punch someone. That's kind of cool. The card back, very interesting. I love how simple it is. I said this in the overview video, but you can see the reflection of the city in his eyes, which is absolutely fantastic. And of course the spider sense going off, the typical red and blue color schemes. Oh, I didn't plan this at all. Very interesting. I'm kind of like skimming over these parts just because I did go over them in like my entire set overview video, but we're definitely going to go into more details with the cards. The health dial, like it has the spider logo. Like what else were they going to put on that? Yeah. Spider-Man's ability card, he's melee, kind of makes sense. I was questioning whether or not they were going to go with like melee because he uses his fists, or range because he shoots webs, but like the webs I think are more of like an auxiliary tool to help him get closer to someone to punch them or kick them. So I think melee makes sense. 15 health, pretty standard. Move 3 makes sense for the character, and it's easy to laugh. It's easy to laugh in the face of danger when you don't take anything too seriously, which I feel like could be the flavor text on my card as well. Jury's still out on that one. His ability, Spidey Sense, which what else would it be? When an opponent attacks Spider-Man, before you play a defense card, they must tell you the printed value of their card. So that takes away a good chunk of the mind game part of the combat mind games. There are certain fighters that this absolutely wrecks because their attack card values are so spread out that it'll be obvious to tell what the attack is. And there are some characters where they have a very thin margin of what their attacks are, and it won't be helpful. But either way, knowing what your opponent is attacking with means that they can't bait attack you, and you know when their heavy hits are coming for the most part, which can help you make very educated block decisions, which I think will be great for like people starting to play the game or people like trying to feel out the combat, because if you know what your opponent's attacking with, you can figure out what the best card for you to block with is, and that will help you in the future narrow down what to block with, even when you don't know. Like I feel like it'll help, or maybe it'll just be a crutch that when taken away, you absolutely fall on your face because you don't know the number that they're saying anymore. Who knows? But anyways, a character that this screws is Wukong, because he has a 7 and a 0, and often you don't know which one is being played. But when you do, they both kind of lose their potency. And then there's characters like Yanenga or Bruce Lee or Sinbad that, in Yanenga or Bruce Lee's case, have a lot of 3s. And they're just going to attack you with 3s, and that's not really going to be helpful for you. Because you don't know if it's a 3 like the double attack for Yanenga, you don't know which G it is, you don't know if it's the 3 Jaws of the Beast, that could be a 6 instead. And for Sinbad, he's going to attack you with a bunch of 2s all game. Maybe some 3s from the Porter, and you won't be sure if it's the draw or the shift, and you will have no clue what value the voyage is. I think there's a whole video I can make on analyzing fighters' attack value spreads. So we'll keep that in the back pocket for a rainy day. But this ability, I think, can be like one of the strongest abilities in the game. Might even be already. The first card we're going to talk about. Can I not flip cards that are locked? All right, we're going to have to unlock these. There we go. Still figuring out Vorpal. Swinging Kick. It is a printed 6 value attack with text. They buffed log somehow. I said this in the other video, but it's not quite a beast form. Thank goodness. So you have 3 copies of this boost value of 2. And after combat, you move the opposing fighter a number of spaces up to the amount of combat damage dealt. So if they block with a 4 and you deal 2, you can move them up to 2 spaces. If you land an undefended 6, you can move them 6 spaces, which is good. This character, I think, likes controlling movement, like where people are, and an effect that lets him move the opponents. Also good, and this is like his biggest high value attack. So hopefully he's dealing a lot of damage and then getting a lot of velocity in his kick. I think with the amount of card draw Spider-Man has and the ability to not get baited, you can play him at a low hand count and be very aggressive. And this card is great for then kiting with advantage and maybe pushing your aggression a little too far, maybe only having 1 or 2 cards in your hand and then just yeeting your opponent out of the way. Something to think about. The next card is Thwip. It made me think of the Tobey Maguire scene where he's like figuring out how to go web. Anyways, 4 value attack. Love that it's interfering with the symbol there. I mean that. There's a lot of like art popping out in these sets, and I think they do a great job of choosing when to do it and when not. After combat, if you won the combat, place Spider-Man in any space in his zone. So it's basically disengage from Angel, the Raptors, and Bigfoot's decks, but conditional on winning the combat. which is a lot less good because a guaranteed like kite with advantage would be really good against melee fighters. But conditional is fine, I guess. With fours, you're probably gonna win, depending on the opponent. Like you're almost never gonna win with this card versus Bigfoot, but there will be some characters like Robin where this will win every time. So the effect is good. Like I said, he wants to move around. He can be really aggressive, and this is, I think, a really solid effect against melee characters. Then we have Web Shooters. It's a 3-value block only, and it says Spider-Man cannot take more than 2 combat damage this combat. You have 3 copies of it. We'll come back to that in a second. So with your ability, you know when your opponent is playing a card that's like a 5 or a 6. If they're playing a 6, if Bigfoot lays down his log, or Arthur plays Excalibur, or Dracula plays Beast form, Wukong plays Ox form, you can flip that card over. You can play this card and suddenly you're it's like you're playing a super feint into Beast form or the other cards. Like, it's just good. It limits the damage you can take, and it's kind of like a cancel in some regards to those cards, but not entirely. It also works like in the case of like Sinbad. If he's playing Voyage Home, it's an 8-value Voyage Home, you can flip the card over. It still is only dealing you 2 damage, which normally I preach how feint. The whole point of the cancel is to like preserve health through negating card effects that deal you damage. This is really good at kind of being a pseudo feint in this deck for those during combat increase this card's value, or just the big value blocks, because Spider-Man can't really value block outside of this card really. And I love that it functions as like kind of both a feint and a value block, but also neither. Just kind of cool. It's a very, very strong card. And you have 3 copies of it, so all 3 of Bigfoot's logs are just 6 damage. Then we have Counterattack. It's a 3-value block with 3 copies, and it says after combat, if the value of your opponent's card is 4 or higher, deal 2 damage to the opposing fighter. So this is like Counterpunch, but balanced, so a lot closer to Son of a Boxer. Well, it's basically Son of a Boxer, because if your opponent's card value is 4 or higher, you're losing the combat and you're dealing 2 damage. Except this is not adjacent. I don't know if Boxer is adjacent. I think it is. It would make sense if it was adjacent. So this is just 2 damage to the opposing fighter. So this is really good versus ranged characters. And notice that it says if the value of your opponent's card is 4 or higher, not the printed value. So again, in the case of like Sinbad, he could tell you 2, but if he has a bunch of Voyages in his discard pile, the value of his card may very well be 4 or higher. And in that case, you'll be able to deal the damage back. So 2 damage 3 times is a lot. We've seen how Counterpunch is absolutely disgusting on Sherlock Holmes, but you also can't cancel that. This is not guaranteed damage, but it is not adjacent required, and you will probably be able to see it coming. So this is, I think, a very, very solid block option for Spider-Man. We have the first scheme, Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man. Spider-Man can recover 3 health, and you can place him in any space in his zone. So again, like a mobility card, 3 health. So he's actually like decently tanky at 21 health. He is going to be taking some damage from his block cards, but like without risk, there is no reward. And so I think that's like, it makes Counterattack a health trade-off that you can take more often than not. And the next scheme is With Great Power. Love the art. All of Spider-Man's attacks this turn are +1 value. Draw a card, gain an action. So basically Nunchaku, but you get to draw a card. There are 2 copies of this, and I think this card is actually like not very good. Just because one of my biggest problems I have with Spider-Man is he has a ton of draw, which is funny that we haven't actually seen any yet. We've seen half his cards, and he has a ton of draw, but he doesn't really have an efficient way to spend the cards. Like, he doesn't have action gain outside of the scheme. He doesn't have boosting. So I think the way you use his card draw is as like a recovery mechanism to just go all out on your opponent, be really aggressive, hit them with big stuff, kite with advantage, have the perfect block in hand, and then just be able to draw back to a medium-ish hand size and keep going. And what Great Power wants you to do is kind of like a Bruce Lee turn, where you build up your hand and then just throw a bunch of attacks out and get a whole lot of value out of the +1 attack. But with Spider-Man, you're only ever going to be able to attack twice on your turn, unless Achilles' heel. Ugh. The flashbacks. And so, like, at most, or not at most, but I think in general, in most games, this will be 2 damage, but probably less. And I like how it synergizes with some of your cards. Like, it lets you move the opponent in extra space because it makes the damage higher. It makes you more likely to win the combat so you can move. But just, I think, like, you have to wait till your opponent is adjacent to you, and it's the start of your turn, and then you can play it. And then they might just play like a guaranteed move effect and move out of the way. Although, Swinging Web Kick, in that case, could act like a chase card, because let's say Sinbad plays Toil and Danger, moves away. Swinging Web Kick, you somehow kick him back towards you. So very interesting. It's like Genie's I Am Freed, in a way, where really solid option that your opponent can't really get away from first action, and it allows you to attack again. So maybe that's just a combo you have to do, but then your opponent might see it coming and like value block. I just don't see this card having quite as big as an impact as the art would suggest. The next card is right in the face. It is a 4-value versatile, and this is your only 4-value, printed 4-value block in your deck. So I probably use this on defense like 85% of the time, although it is a decent feint bait if that's what you're going for, but both of your attacks are also decent feint bait. Right in the face. Immediately! My mic's over there if you couldn't tell. Your opponent cannot draw cards this turn. So this is like Terrifying Roar, but with cards, not movement, which I think is really interesting, because you can play aggressive, kind of trick your opponent into matching your aggression, and then when they attack you, I think this is a great card to play on your opponent's first action. They can't draw cards anymore, which means they're stuck at the hand size that they are now, which could be bad if they were potentially planning on playing that Riches Beyond Compare to get their hand back up, or it stops the draw 2 effect of Little Dragon, which is nice. And like, this can screw up Bloody Mary, trying to play around with her hand count on her turn. There's a lot of interesting things this card can do. T-Rex. This will stop per draw at the end of her turn? Question mark? It stops Bigfoot from being able to use his ability. Some interesting things there. And I think attacking with it kind of doesn't do anything with the effect, because if you're attacking second action, great. The evade they blocked with can't draw them a card. I'm thinking of the Black Panther evade, because on the Bloody Mary evade, that actually would matter. But a lot of times it'll only affect like 1 action, maybe 2, but it has to, like, if they're not drawing cards on their block cards, then it doesn't matter. So I think this is a solid block option. Then we have Spider Sense Tingling. I talked about this in the other video. Very thematic card. Love the art. It's a 2-value versatile. It says if the value of your opponent's card is 4 or higher, draw 2 cards. You have 3 copies of this, so your Spider Sense is tingling. You know something's coming, and this is a great hand recovery tool. The value is a little questionable, especially when you're probably going to be taking damage from counterattack. And like I think in most cases you probably would rather block with counterattack to actually like deal the damage back, but sometimes the card is nice. Uh, this also has some like sneaky use on offense where it can kind of be like a regroup, but instead of like a guaranteed card draw, maybe two, it's like all or nothing. You're getting 2 or 0, what does mean that your opponent's wasting a good value block. So a very interesting card, lots of fun things you can do with that. And the last new card we have is Wall Crawler. And 3 value, versatile, place Spider-Man in any space in his zone. So another movement card. This will be a really good anti-range tool for helping you get in range of an opponent, especially when they're attacking you last action. You can just whoop, crawl over to them, start your turn adjacent to them, maybe do some things with great power and swing and kick. And the 3 basic cards that Spider-Man has kind of makes sense, like when you think about it. Disarming Shot, Momentous Shift, and Snark. I love that he has Snark just because that is Spider-Man. He quips, he's constantly joking. Remember, nothing is dangerous or something if you don't take everything too seriously. Disarming Shot, we've seen this in Robin Hood's deck. You only have 2 copies, just like Robin, but helps you draw. Momentous Shift, great card to have 3 copies of because if you'll notice, you have kind of like Bigfoot numbers where you have 3 6s, a bunch of 4s, and then some 5s. And it's just a good thing to just like kind of push you over the edge in some matchups. And Snark, more card draw, good anti-melee defense, and just, I guess, like Wall Crawler in this, kind of just like solid value blocks when you know your opponent isn't playing something worth web shooting, and maybe counterattack and Spider Sense won't trigger. So overall, how good do I think this character is going to be? I'm not sure, because the ability is insane. He doesn't have feints, though, as a balancing mechanism, because, like, obviously if he would be broken if he had feints. And the pseudo cancel, I think, is like a good compromise there. Like I said, some matchups the ability will just completely make the matchup a walk in the park, and in others it won't matter. And he doesn't really fit my play style, but he does kind of have like the Bigfoot, big numbers, smack you hard package with a counter punch thrown in, with an Unchaku thrown in, with some healing thrown in, and a bunch of card draw. So he's kind of like a bunch of different fighters combined together. I'm really honestly not sure. I think I'm probably going to be underrating him a little bit, but I don't think the ability will be game breaking enough to make him like A tier or anything, just because not being able to feint can be really rough against certain characters. And I played against Palmet Epin's Little Red with Spider-Man, and I got absolutely annihilated because not being able to cancel anything in that matchup is horrible. Horrible. And you don't quite have like the health tank that Yanenga has to deal with that. So I'm going to say Spider-Man's probably going to be like mid tier. I think he's just going to be mid, like C tier, maybe low B, but like the roster right now has like 40 characters on it, and I don't think he's better than like more than 25 of them. I think like low mid tier is where I would put him, but I think he's going to be a fun character, just because the ability just gives you unprecedented knowledge, and I think using that knowledge can really infuriate your opponent based on how you respond. So yeah, I think he's a solid adaptation of of Spider-Man in the comics, and I love the art, the red and yellow McDonald's colors, really pops. And I believe this is Oliver Barrett. This is Oliver Barrett, right? Okay, there's so many circles. This has to be Oliver Barrett. I think he did a great job, as always. Another circle. So yeah, those were my first impressions on Spider-Man. I'm probably very wrong. Although, am I? Let me know what you think of this character, what you think of his ability, and remember that like I have only a handful of plays, so take my words with a grain of salt, and be excited to like stress test this guy and see exactly what he can withstand, because I'm probably the most curious about him out of the 3 heroes in this set. So yeah, I'm gonna be excited to see just how good Spider-Man will be. Just how, why didn't I think of this before? Just how amazing Spider-Man will be. I'm not gonna edit that out so you can see me like think of the joke in real time after I already said the. Okay, so anyways, that's all I have for my first impressions of Spider-Man. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, like, subscribe, and yeet!